A lot of people supplement extensively with products that don't actually benefit their metabolic health. Today, we're talking about which supplements are worth your time and support your energy production, thyroid function, and fat loss, if that's what you're after. The content in this podcast is intended for educational and informational purposes only. It's not personalized nutrition advice, medical advice, or a substitute for working with a qualified healthcare professional. The opinions expressed are my own and do not represent the views of my employer or any professional organization. I'm Shara, a registered dietitian with a pro-metabolic approach to nutrition, and this is the Metabolic Mindset Podcast. In any decent dietary framework, supplements are not meant to replace food. Good supplements should really simplify your nutrition routine and remove bottlenecks that interfere with energy production. We're going to just sort of go through these piece by piece. The MVP, in my opinion, is the multivitamin. A good quality multivitamin acts as metabolic insurance, especially during fat loss phases, traveling, limited food variety, or high stress. And we may think that doesn't apply to us, but if we are with limited food variety, that's probably the most common one that I see where we kind of lock into a rhythm with macros or routine and we eat the same foods over and over and over again. And there's not really a problem with that. And in future episodes, we'll talk about why that can actually benefit the gut. But, if you're not commonly eating oysters and Brazil nuts and you're not getting varied sources of selenium and zinc and copper, this applies to you. If you're not looking in your fridge and going, what's my bioavailable source of manganese for today? That's what I mean by limited food variety. And most of us don't have time to make sure that every single day has appropriate amounts of vitamin A, selenium, zinc, copper, magnesium, etc. There are just too many to keep track of. So it's easier to focus on your macronutrients than it is to look at these micronutrients, which is where the multivitamin comes in. We want to focus on macronutrients and the quality of our diet. Like I just said, the goal with a multi is not mega dosing nutrients, which also common. You'll grab a multivitamin and it has 6,000% of the daily value for a particular nutrient. Sometimes that's actually beneficial because the daily value can be set quite low. It's not necessarily for optimum human function, but we do have to pay attention to, are they mega dosing every single nutrient in this vitamin? This is mostly to fill consistent gaps, especially those that affect your thyroid function. Uh, nutrients that are important for mitochondrial energy production and your nervous system stability is why we would take a multi. We want to look for a multi that has bioavailable B vitamins, selenium, zinc, and iodine, if appropriate, and we'll talk about that. Balanced trace minerals in moderate doses rather than extreme amounts. And I say if appropriate in regards to iodine because too much iodine is problematic. If you're problematic for the thyroid, and if you're unsure of your iodine intake, you can do a quick cursory Google search of foods that are high in iodine just to see, is this something that I'm taking in more than I think or less than I think? I prefer to use non-iodized salt, and I take a multivitamin that contains iodine so that I'm just getting a consistent iodine dose day in and day out. Bioavailable B vitamins are forms that your body can use, pardon me, immediately without needing multiple conversion steps. And this gets so heated in dietetics. You do not have to take a methylated B vitamin, but if it's easier for your body to utilize the nutrients in methylated B vitamins, I don't know why you wouldn't if the option is there. This is really relevant for the MTHFR gene, which helps convert folate and folic acid into the active form methylfolate, used for methylation, really important. It's used for neurotransmitter production, detoxification pathways, and cardiovascular regulation. So if someone carries an MTHFR variant, that conversion step can be less efficient. So if we're taking methylated B vitamins like methylfolate and methylcobalamin, it provides the body with the already active forms and reduces metabolic strain. So, yes, most of us are not going to have an issue converting these. You can take cyanocobalamin. It's not a huge deal, but I just prefer to take the methylated forms of B vitamins to put a little bit less stress on my body. Um, these variants in the MTHFR gene series are pretty common. Estimates suggest roughly 30 to 40% of Americans carry at least one MTHFR variant, and a smaller portion, around 10 to 15% of us, carry forms that more significantly affect enzyme activity, depending on your ancestry. So, you know, is the testing for this necessary? I don't really think so. If you have money bags and you want to go get tested for this, you can. But knowing that it's such a high rate of the population, you might want to just buy a methylated B vitamin and not be concerned about this. One widely used clinical option is Thorne Basic Nutrients 2 a day. I love this multivitamin. Most of my clients are on Thorne Basic Nutrients 2 a day. They do also make specialized multis for like prenatal, 50 plus. So Thorne has a nice suite of vitamins. It has everything mentioned above, plus nutrients that are necessary for thyroid function that are not always included in other multis. So I have no affiliation with Thorne. I just really like their stuff. Um, okay, yeah. Notably, iron is intentionally not included in most foundational multivitamins. And that's because iron status should always be individualized. we we don't want to tell someone to just start supplementing iron without first checking their iron labs. Supplementing iron without confirmed deficiency can increase oxidative stress, it can interfere with metabolic flexibility, and it can create unnecessary burden on the liver. So check your iron stores before you just start taking iron every single day. And this is best if it's physician led and you can have a physician check your labs pretty periodically, especially as you're supplementing with iron. And double, especially if you're correcting an iron deficiency. Timing should be with meals for the Thorn multi or most multis because they have A, D, E, and K, which are fat soluble vitamins, and it's not going to kill you if you take your multi without a fat containing meal, but you will get more bang for your buck, and that vitamin will digest and absorb appropriately if we take it with a fat containing meal. So most of my clients just take theirs with dinner. If it's 2 capsules and you kind of want to split it up, you can do a breakfast that contains fat and take your first pill and then your second pill with dinner. All right, so the multi, I really try to get most people on a multi. Uh, like I said, if you're not just daily looking in your fridge and you're some sort of freak that's created like an Excel chart to make sure that you're getting all of your vitamin A, C, D, E, A, K, manganese, iron, all the things, it's best to just take a quality multi. And then, when you go into the doctor's office, we want to assess certain things like our vitamin D levels and iron to see if you need supplemental on top of that. Those are the most common that I would need to supplement someone with. But let's move on from the multi. Vitamin E. So, this is one of the most underutilized supplements that is fantastic for metabolic and cardiovascular health. Its primary role as an antioxidant is actually protecting against oxidation of polyunsaturated fats, which can otherwise disrupt thyroid signaling, your mitochondrial function, and your vascular health. What are polyunsaturated fats? These are in high doses in seed oils, nuts, and seeds. They're even in some products like chicken, depending on how the chicken was raised. So we get exposed to polyunsaturated fats without even trying, really. They're not necessarily evil, but we don't want massive doses of polyunsaturated fat, and we know that they can cause oxidative damage in the body. So if you take vitamin E, it's sort of like an insurance against this. Many of us have been chronically exposed to seed oils, especially in the United States, which are very high in that polyunsaturated fat. You'll hear it called PUFA. It's particularly important during weight loss to protect your body from oxidative damage because when we're losing fat, we're mobilizing fat into the bloodstream and we're going to be mobilizing years and years of stored polyunsaturated fatty acids. So it's really important to take vitamin E if you're in your weight loss journey and yeah, I'm going to jump on this and lose 50 pounds, please take some vitamin E while you do that, or at least make sure that your multi has a sufficient amount of vitamin E in it. When you're choosing a vitamin E supplement, look for mixed tocopherols in natural forms that are labeled D alpha, not synthetic DL alpha, and preferably oil based capsules or drops. So, timing is best with a meal containing fat. This is a fat soluble vitamin. I do it with dinner, it's just easiest. Typical dosing ranges from 100 to 200 IUs daily for general support, and up to 200 to 400 IUs in higher oxidative stress contexts. So my clients, I'll have them take a supplemental vitamin E because in the regular basic thorn nutrients 2 per day, it's not quite enough vitamin E. So I have them taking around 200 to 400 IUs total supplemental vitamin E. Um, Vitamin E, it's important to avoid supplements that are diluted in polyunsaturated seed oils. So why would we take something that protects us from polyunsaturated fatty acids if the supplement itself is immersed in polyunsaturated fatty acids? Instead we want to look for products that use olive oil or coconut oil as a carrier. And like I said before, some multis have quality vitamin E already, and you can just calculate those total IUs to determine if you need a vitamin E supplement. If you don't know how to do this, just type in IU converter online. There's so many easy calculators. You can even use ChatGPT, whatever floats your boat. This podcast mic is heavier than it looks. Um, Magnesium is foundational for stabilizing metabolism. So we're talking about magnesium right now. It regulates insulin sensitivity, which we want to be insulin sensitive. It regulates sleep quality, muscle relaxation, nervous system tone, and bowel motility. Really important. Most people are looking for those things. Low magnesium can increase your cortisol and adrenaline, which can slow your fat loss and disrupt your thyroid signaling. I like to look for forms like glycinate, malate, or taurate, and avoid magnesium oxide because it has very poor absorption. It's a dirt cheap supplement. You can do better than that. Timing works best in the evening or before bed, and dosing for this is typically between 200 to 400 milligrams daily, depending on your tolerance and need. I take mag glycinate, it helps me sleep, and I have many clients that will add in additional citrate, especially if they need help with like bowel motility. So if you're taking a mag glycinate and you're constipated or things aren't moving super well, you can add in citrate as needed. We don't want to we don't want to megadose citrate every time we feel the littlest bit constipated. If you're getting constipated, you need to change something about your diet, move around more, drink fluids. But you can take this occasionally on top of the mag glycinate or other forms of magnesium to help out with your bowels. Electrolytes. Yeah, I'm probably gonna have to do an entire episode on electrolytes, honestly, but briefly we'll cover this. These are more impactful than many traditional supplements because people can feel the difference when they take electrolytes. They directly influence adrenal signaling, your thyroid conversion, your cardiovascular stability, and your cellular hydration. So, becoming hydrated on the cellular level, not just loading up our blood with extra water. Sodium and potassium will help to move glucose into cells where it can be used for energy, which reduces reliance on stress hormones. I know everyone is so afraid of carbs, but you want glucose inside of your cells so that they can produce energy. and electrolytes will help you do that. We want to look for simple formulas with minimal additives and no artificial sweeteners if you're sensitive to that. I'm not sensitive at all to artificial sweeteners, but don't don't buy a product with artificial sweeteners because you want to be using electrolytes pretty frequently. Timing is really flexible, but they're especially useful in the morning, before your workouts, during your workouts, after your workouts, during travel, especially plane trips, and high stress periods. So that's kind of a long list. Like, I usually just ask clients to try to do 1 to 2 concerted electrolyte drinks in a day. Um, I'll do a whole podcast episode on electrolytes because when you say that, it's very ambiguous, but we're talking about charged salts. Um, Many individuals benefit from total daily sodium intake in the range of roughly 3 to 5 grams from both food and electrolyte supplements. And athletes, I hate this language online. If you look at like Academy of Dietetics or Sports Medicine, they'll say athletes may need considerably more. Athletes need more than 3 to 5 grams of sodium. If you're running every day or weightlifting or surfing or golfing, you need to replete your sodium. And people always feel so much better when they start taking electrolytes. And you can even just have someone add salt to their water and they'll start feeling better. So I don't think it's appropriate to say athletes may need considerably more. Athletes need, in particular, additional sodium. Creatine, frequently misunderstood. This isn't so bad anymore. I think people are getting more used to creatine, but it's been previously misunderstood as a muscle only supplement. Its primary benefit is actually supporting ATP production. All of us have to produce ATP. That's the core energy currency of the body is ATP. It improves brain energy, exercise recovery, muscle retention during fat loss, and metabolic rate. Like all of those are beneficial things. We want to look for creatine monohydrate that is third party tested for contaminants. You can be fancy and get the super micronized or fancy, super duper lovely creatine supplementation, but in my opinion, it's not necessary at all. You can just take a creatine monohydrate. Um, Timing on that is flexible, but pairing it with carbohydrates post workout can enhance your uptake. So I would do it then. You should be having carbs post workout, so just add some creatine to maybe a protein shake with carbs. Consistent daily dose of 3 to 5 grams is sufficient for most people. I don't know where that 3-gram number comes from because most of the studies show 5-gram supplementation. And if you buy any serving of creatine monohydrate, it's almost always 5 grams. So just follow the packaging instructions and take 5 grams of creatine daily. There are some newer studies that suggest more than 5 grams of creatine, even 10 and 15-gram doses, may benefit brain and bone health. I'm still not confident on giving people a recommendation on that, but I will do 10 grams a day and I'll split it up post workout and then another dose later on in the day. And when you start doing this, if you start doing this, it will immediately cause gastric distress. So please don't try this out right before an important work meeting. Like, do it on the weekends and start getting used to it and split up the doses. Do smaller doses of creatine because it'll mess you up. But you get used to it over time. And I don't mean a long time. I mean, you'll get used to it in literally a week or two. Glycine. I take this every day. So, glycine, um, or collagen, we'll kind of talk about them in the same context here, but glycine is one of the chief amino acids in collagen. And usually when people are taking collagen, their purpose in doing so is to get glycine. It plays a powerful supportive role in sleep You can take this as a sleep supplement. It's really effective. It helps with gut integrity, so literally gluing the gut junctions back together when there's been damage. Connective tissue health and liver detox pathways. Glycine's important for all of these things. What is my hair doing? Let's see. So, these nutrients help balance amino acid intake, particularly in diets that are higher in muscle meat. So this is another one of those things that I see people stress out about a lot, where they're worried about amino acid intake and perfectly balancing their amino acid intake. Which, is sometimes if you have a person that's only eating red meat and they've been doing that for a long time, yeah, they're going to have a lot of methionine. And if they're not having connective tissue or other types of meat, they are going to have amino acid imbalances. But for most of us that eat a pretty varied diet and we're exposed to chicken and fish and turkey and shrimp and beef, amino acid imbalances aren't really a concern of mine. You can take glycine because it's a non-inflammatory amino acid, unlike methionine, which is a complex inflammatory amino acid. So you can do this non-inflammatory glycine multiple times per day if you'd like, and it's something that I would super recommend adding in as a supplement. It helps with supporting parasympathetic or rest and digest nervous system activity, which most of us are just in sympathetic mode all of the time. So if there's something that can help us relax, you should probably look into it, especially if you're like a high functioning executive and you never take 5 seconds to breathe. Um, Look for hydrolyzed collagen peptides. I like Vital Protein's collagen peptides. They're pretty affordable for most people and widely available. Or you can do pure glycine powder, which I also do. I do glycine powder, especially at night to help me sleep. Sometimes I'll put it in my coffee during the day. And I'll take collagen peptides mixed into anything that I can physically mix collagen peptides into. So if I'm having a bowl of ground beef, I might mix collagen peptides in there. I'll put it in Greek yogurt. I'll put it in protein shakes. It's, I'll do 2 or 3 doses of collagen peptides a day. That's a little overkill. I would say if you're adding in collagen peptides every single day, you're doing better than most of the population. Um, Dosing typically ranges from 5 to 15 grams daily, depending on if you're taking glycine or collagen peptides. They're different things. One is just the amino acid glycine, the other has other amino acids included in it. It's more of a whole food product. And like I said, I typically do 2 to 3 servings of collagen peptides daily and 1 serving of around 3 grams of glycine at night. And I'm not perfect, so sometimes I completely forget to take my collagen. What to avoid? So, this is where I spend a lot of time with people in appointments because, and it's really why I wanted to record this podcast, is I'll see someone on 75 supplements. So, it's equally important to sort of recognize what's not foundational. Um, Stimulant based fat burners, high dose antioxidant stacks, trendy metabolic hacks, they can suppress your natural energy signaling. They're not always beneficial. They can increase reliance on stress hormones. They can interfere with thyroid and glucose metabolism. So, you can research these supplements in detail with an open mind. If you're looking to buy some of them, there's too many to mention here, even. But the goal is always to support our natural metabolism. What does your body naturally do when metabolism is working well? We don't want to override that. We want to support. Fish oil. In a pro-metabolic framework, this is so hotly debated. It's Fish oil is generally avoided because it's very high in polyunsaturated fats. And these are PUFAs again. which are prone to oxidation and can increase cellular stress over time. So, while they're often marketed for heart health, chronic PUFA intake can interfere with thyroid signaling. It can interfere with mitochondrial energy production and metabolic efficiency, and does not meaningfully lower lipoprotein A or other cardiovascular risk markers. And I say meaningfully because, yes, it will decrease some of these cardiovascular risk factors, but it's doing so by suppressing metabolism. And it can look beneficial on lab short term, but this is not what's we're not doing things that are beneficial short term. We're trying to take care of your metabolism and your cardiovascular health, like your real cardiovascular health. Instead of supplementing with fish oil, pro-metabolic strategies prioritize whole food fats that are stable and metabolically supportive, such as coconut oil, olive oil, animal fats, in reasonable amounts. I can't tell you how many times I tell people, like, hey, saturated fats are beneficial for human metabolism. And they go, I don't want to be eating fat all the time. And I go, no, 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 no. Fat is the lowest macronutrient that we aim for in a pro metabolic framework in most dietary protocols that are not ketogenic. So, although I'm advocating that people eat natural food sources of saturated fat, like animals, coconuts, I'm not advocating that people sit around and house coconut oil. It's not the same thing. Um, in terms of fish oil, these are EPA and DHA are the primary things that people are after. And the real issue with this is that because they're so prone to oxidation, these are typically shipped. So if you can picture a shipping container burning hot, um, it's gonna get really hot, and oxidation happens under heat. So, there are some companies that will third party test for rancidity. There are not a lot of fantastic fish oil supplements where I guarantee you every single time you get that fish oil, it's going to be completely untouched, not oxidized at all. Also, EPA and DHA have the propensity to store in the human body. So this is something people don't talk about. But if your diet is low in fish or eggs or foods that contain EPA and DHA, the body will store it, and it won't let it go. It'll hold on to it, just like it can with magnesium and other nutrients that don't come by in our food very often, or like copper, for instance. So this argument that you need to megadose with polyunsaturated fatty acids every single day, like there are entire cultures that are completely landlocked and have been landlocked for centuries. And then they're not just housing fish oil capsules, like they don't have their Nordic Natural shipped in to take every day. And they don't just die, you know. And I know that's an oversimplification, and they might be eating things like eggs and the like to get some EPA and DHA, but most of us will occasionally eat some seafood or occasionally eat some eggs. And if that's not you, you could find a really well sourced, third party tested EPA, DHA, or fish oil supplement and take that occasionally. But I disagree with housing this stuff every single day because of what it does to the thyroid. And your thyroid is the master and commander of your metabolism. So why would we be putting something into our body that slows down thyroid function every single day? I don't understand it. And I don't want that to sound confusing, as in I don't understand what fish oils do in the body. I very much understand what fish oils do in the body. What I don't understand is why these have been marketed and pushed on people for so long, just like statins. And they act very similar to statins in the body. So people are becoming more aware of why statins are bad for your long-term metabolic health. And when you mention statin, people will kind of go, "Ooh," they'll shrivel up. It should be the same with mega dosing EPA and DHA. It hasn't really been spoken about a lot, and this is a difficult topic. Pre and probiotics. So pre and probiotics are often unnecessary in a pro metabolic framework in particular, because they can stress the gut microbiome if they're used indiscriminately. And that word is so funny to me, indiscriminately. Your gut microbiome is infinitely more complex and intricate than your fingerprint is. And everybody, to say this is an understatement, but everybody's is different, and it changes based off of your stress, where you live, the type of air that you're breathing, your thoughts at night, what color shirt you're wearing. There's 800 million things that affect your gut microbiome. And we frankly understand the gut microbiome less than we do the bottom of the ocean or the surface of the moon. So, recommending that someone take certain probiotics or prebiotics when nothing is understood of this person's genealogy or their typical diet is beyond me. Um, if we're eating a very clean diet with lots of good soluble fiber and our diet's quite diverse, there's no need to introduce random pre and probiotics into the diet that some of these bacteria can actually take up space in your digestive canal that could otherwise be populated by bacteria that would be beneficial for the types of foods that you are eating. So, food for thought. Um, if carbohydrate intake is insufficient or when the body's natural microbial balance is already sensitive, you don't want to make this worse by taking several pills of pre and probiotic every single day. Uh, Overuse can trigger bloating, fermentation, or mild inflammation, which can raise cortisol and slow metabolic processes. Instead, I'll kind of run you through this. Like, what does a pro metabolic approach focus on? We kind of try to naturally support your gut. Um, I know it's not always great to use the analogy of like your ancestors didn't do this, but your ancestors didn't do this. They didn't take pre and probiotics. And the reason why we can't always use that analogy is like, yeah, maybe our ancestors didn't quite live as long or they didn't have the options that we have, and I agree. But the entire time that humans have been around, they've never taken pre and probiotics. They've eaten foods that might contain pre and probiotics, and I would think that's a better idea. So how do we naturally support your gut? We do things like glycine. We eat fruits that have soluble fiber in them so that it creates a slip and slide in your intestines and a favorable environment for good bacteria to grow. We eat metabolically supportive foods like protein, carbohydrates, root vegetables, rather than relying on supplemental strains that may not be personalized or consistently effective. And, you know, sometimes I'm wrong on this. Someone might feel really good taking a certain probiotic or prebiotic. And if they tell me, I started taking this and I noticed a real difference in the way I'm breaking down and absorbing food, keep doing it, man. Happy for you. But if you're sitting around wondering whether or not you should order a pre and probiotic, I would first have you assess your water intake, your electrolyte intake. Are you eating lots of good fruits and vegetables? What's your movement like? Do you get any sunlight? How are you sleeping? Assess these other things that are important for your gut before we just start taking a random supplement. In conclusion, the hierarchy for implementation on this is really simple. So we want to start with a good quality multivitamin. Look for a third party tested quality multivitamin. Magnesium is beneficial for most people, and again, I like magnesium glycinate. And electrolytes, those should be your base supplements. Not super expensive, not very complicated, covering a lot of bases. And then you can layer in vitamin E. If your multi is not sufficient in vitamin E, you can take creatine, collagen or glycine is needed. If you're a person that just snacks on bones and eats lots of soups and broths, you may not need as much glycine or collagen as a person like me who's a basic chicken and rice person. um But this will keep your approach really practical and sustainable and aligned with pro metabolic physiology rather than just overloading with random supplements that could be hurting you long term. And, just sort of take a minute and evaluate if it's appropriate for you to be taking 35 pills every single day. Okay, thanks. Bye.